Hi, it's Natalie Wheeland here from VidVersity, and I'm just going to take you through a little bit about instructional design. That's the concept of taking some material and making it much more accessible and useful to a learner. We all know that video is something that a lot of people use these days to learn with, but the problem with a lot of the videos that are out there in the educational space and the corporate space is they're really long and linear, and you have to find the parts you're interested in. You often have to sit through parts that aren't that interesting. So VidVersity allows you to do a number of things like chunk it up into chapters, link to useful information, and make it more of a complete learning experience. But it also enables the learner to choose the parts they want to do. So when you're building a course, you upload your course or you upload a video. So remember, with categories, you can always find the videos that you've done in the past. So I'm working on a banking video. This is a really large video. It's about 70 minutes with 3 different speakers. It covers a number of areas, and the traditional way of delivering this is just making it available. So this is courtesy of Michael Green, who provides some fantastic videos with really useful information. But sometimes the problem can be is the person who's watching this video might be familiar with the area and not need to sit through the entire
Certainly.
video. So when we're working with the video, think about really natural places that it could be broken down into. So I'll show you what I did with this one. So here it is after I've done some instructional design with it. So the first thing is you no longer have to look at the entire video. You can choose the parts that are useful. So I broke it down into very sort of natural, an introduction, the judicial history. So they gave an overview and the background of the key cases. They then spoke about the code, which is the banking code. So if that was all you're interested in, you could just go straight to that component as a learner. They also then spoke about 2 leading cases that have had a profound impact on this area of law. That's the Doggett case and then the NAB and Rose case. Doggett being the main one that this particular seminar was discussing. Now, it's about a 30-40 minute discussion on this case, and you might not want to go through all of that or need to as a learner. So if you wanted an introduction, there was some procedural issues, so I broke it down into that. There was some main issues. There was the Court of Appeal, what they had to say, and then the key outcomes. So you can imagine as a learner, instead of having to look at the entire thing, I could just perhaps go to the key outcomes and see what impact the Doggett case has had on banking law. I can also go to just the last bit, which is the conclusions and takeaways. So what are the key things I need to have learnt from this particular video? So you can see as a learner, it's a much more engaging experience and allows the learner to choose. So what's important from an instructional design perspective, particularly when using video and VidVersity, is make sure that the headings you use when you create chapters are really good explanations of what's inside there. Help the learner decide which is the parts that they should go to and will be most useful to them. Also think about the name of the course, and it's really useful to say who the presenter was or presenters and a little bit about them, because often credibility comes from that, and that's an important part of it. So going back now to VidVersity, when you're uploading a video and editing, think what you can add to it to make it a more beneficial experience for the learner. So for instance, there might be components where someone in the audience is asking a question and you can't hear the question being asked, but you might be able to hear the answer. That's a good opportunity to cut when the question is being asked and maybe create that a chapter. And then when you're back in your courses, so I'm moving around a lot here, but back in the courses so I'm going to unpublish that because I'd like to edit a bit more, which is create the course there. So when the audience asks the question, maybe cut the video there, and perhaps this was the video, and add a question yourself there, and then the next chapter can be the answering of that question. So what happens is the learner gets to see the overview, they get to have a go at answering the question with some feedback, yes or no, they got it correct, and then the next chapter is what the expert had to say in relation to that question. So that's a really useful way to use questions. Resources is a good place to upload things like a handout or the PowerPoint that they might be referring to. It's also a great place to link to websites, so that might be useful to you. And also, we all know in instructional design and in building learning, people love to have something that they can print out. So by adding a note, so if I added a note which is something like the key concepts discussed, and then whatever I put in here, so I could number them, the banking code, whatever I want to put in there, by saving that, which I won't do because this is a live course, by saving that, I now, if I go back to edit courses and I'll go to publish and I will preview this course, you'll see what the notes add. The notes add this sort of thing, as you can have it as long as you want. I'm going to pause that video. So you can have the notes as long as you want, but it's something the learner can print out and take away. So to sort of sum up and give you some key takeaways, when you're looking at the video, and often the video will come to you in a very raw format, it won't necessarily be that accessible and useful for a learning experience, think about breaking it into chapters, but when you do so, we break it into chapters by editing it. When you do, think about a natural place where it would be useful to start and end a chapter. Try and keep them to no more than 10 minutes. We know that learners like micro-learning. 5 minutes is really the optimum, but sometimes it lends itself to longer amounts, and that's fine, but you really wouldn't want to be more than 10 minutes. So that's your first tip. Break down into chapters of around 5 to 10 minutes. The second tip is when you're back at the courses and you're actually building the course, so you go to create course, think really hard when you add a chapter, so you always have to say, I'm going to create the course, add chapters. This is what the learner sees. So think really hard about what the title of the chapter is. Make it something quite informative so the learner can decide which chapters are useful to them. And you can also upload images, and images are a really great way to draw the learner to the chapter that might be of interest to them. And then the final component is when you're inside a chapter, add these questions, resources and notes to really engage the learner. Questions will always come at the end of each chapter. Use them to engage the learner to get a sense of what they've captured, what they've learned, and help them feel involved in the experience. Add resources, really useful when you're making a reference to something. It's really human nature to be able to want to go and retrieve that quite quickly. So if you link to that, that'll really help the experience. And then finally, the printouts. The printouts are something that again, human nature, we like to be able to go and see and print something out and take it away with us to reinforce the learning. So with that in mind, enjoy VidVersity. Always contact us if you need any help, and I hope that gives you a bit of an overview of some best practices when developing your courses.